morning, and today a burning thing which I always felt is very important to discuss in the Indian pharma space is about how to really succeed in the branded generic markets. The branded generic markets, as we define, is a market where there are multiple players. It's not a monopoly market; it's an oligopoly market, what we say, and there are multiple players with the same molecule under different brand names. And since in India we have this opportunity to market the products as a marketing company, we do definitely have a opportunity to market the same molecule under multiple brand names from different companies. So this helps out, and this helps out in many ways. It has really made the market very competitive, as well as it benefits the patients. It benefits everybody in terms of the improvement in quality. The qualities are really good. Because there is absolutely very tough competition in the market. So in this type of market where multiple players are there with the same kind of molecule with different price ranges and different offerings to the retailers, to the end users in terms of support, in terms of schemes and other things which is there. So it's a highly competitive market which is known to all of you, and you are aware that India is a very highly competitive market in the pharmaceutical space. Now, just to discuss about a couple of things as to how do you as a leader really get your share of the cake from the market and keep growing. How do you do that? Because if you look into the flip side of it, you find there are multiple players who are almost like offering the same thing to the end customer, and probably the product quality is equally good. So when you hardly have any differentiation in the product, then definitely there is something else which needs to be looked into. Now, to start off with, I always feel that a great company or a company which really wants to move forward into this into this very highly competitive market has to be run well. It has to be run well, and as I always mention, that the process always starts from the top. Keep the process at the top absolutely fine, especially for the very senior leaders, the top management of the company. Ensure that you do certain things which are beneficial for the overall running of the machinery of the organization, because it's the senior leaders who decides what kind of strategic involvement that you are going to have in the market. That's number one. Then what kind of process you are going to initiate into the team, which will help the team to be team to respect you first of all, and what you do is that you create an environment where everybody can thrive, your team can thrive. That's very important, that you create an environment where your team can thrive. Now what we see at many times under multiple reasons, under there are many compulsions, or some supernatural aspirations of the senior leaders who wants to grow very fast, who wants to be the number one in a particular segment, and that's a good dream. You definitely have a dream, but you set your process correct first of all. If you really want to become the number one or the top person in the top company in the particular segment, you ensure that you have the capabilities to back it up. If you do not have capabilities to back it up, then the whole pressure goes down to the down level, and there is definitely a crumble and a crack, and you suddenly find one day that there is hardly anybody in the organization to run the show. So at the top, it's the first duty or the first responsibility of the senior most leaders to ensure that you create a process right at the top, which allows to thrive all your team. A majority of them at least should thrive, because they find a level playing ground. And you create an environment, a positive environment, with your the right kind of products in the portfolio, the right kind of process, which will help the team which follows a process to go and get the maximum revenues from the market. So the first point is to create a process at the top, keep things correct at the top. That's the very first point, which I feel is very important when you are running a branded generic company in the Indian pharma space. Now, the second important point, which I personally feel, and I had always believed, that this works out. It has worked out for a lot of people whom I know, and a lot of leaders whom I know, and from a lot of leaders from whom I have learned. The very important aspect for any senior leader is to ensure that whatever team you have, at the very first moment you go and visit the team and the particular territory and the particular market without any baggage in your mind. Which precisely boils down to the fact that if you have got a 50, I'm talking about some senior leaders, if you have got 50 markets that you are responsible for, or lower down the line, if you have got 25 markets which you are responsible for, without anything, without thinking anything, just get into that market, feel the market. I mean, it's very important to feel a market, to understand a market, so that you can review it much better in the later part of your work thing. This is very important. I'll just share an interesting story in this aspect. At one point of time, I had been to an international location, and then there were a couple of people along with me, and we were a group of say 20-25 people in an international location where most of us has gone for the very first time. So we had a guide with us, which the local travel agent had helped us. I mean, the local travel agent has given us, so that he would guide us there and take us to the right place in the shortest possible time, and ensure that things are really pretty smooth when I'm there in the international location. Because we are pretty worried, because a lot of rules are different. We have not been to those places. The locations are different. The language is different. So we need a guide who can smoothen up things, because the time is short and I have to visit a couple of places within the shortest possible time. Now we had gone to that place with a guide, and that the guide was there, and unfortunately the major mistake that the travel agency did was that they had given us a guide who had also not been to that place, and that was the very first time. So probably he had a huge amount of briefing in his own office by his boss, who had probably briefed him that this is how this particular place looks like, and this is how the particular place people behaves like, and this is what you have to do. But what happened was that the moment he was into the market or into the particular territory, he had no clue as to what to do, because probably he couldn't serve the purpose of a guide. He couldn't serve the purpose of a guide, and I had seen it firsthand. And so to bring in an analogy, analogy in terms of leading a team, ensure that you always visit your markets, so that you have better controls. I mean, there can be debate on that, whether we should do it or not, and how we should do it or not. But to a certain extent, I think to have a feel of a market, you need to have a fair idea about how the market looks like, how the customers behave there, what are the local rules there, and what can be the various other aspects which will help you to lead that market at a later point of time. So know your markets. That's my second thing that I had always banked on, and personally I got a lot of success in doing that. I remember my days working as a national sales manager, and in that particular case, India is such a huge country. Probably we have got more than 100 markets in our kitty, and that 100 market are the covered market that we talk about. But what I did was that I made a thorough run across the country and visited each and every headquarter, just to have a feel, and that also had a huge impact in my connectivity with the team. And we had become closer with a lot of people, and hence the person who is at the forefront of the organization, the first phase of the organization, he gets in touch with the senior leader. It helps a lot. He gets in touch with the senior leader, and he loves working with him. He feels privileged. He feels privileged because that particular day probably you are talking directly to him, and he has got enough time to talk to you. You can understand what are the problems that he is facing. You can understand what kind of strengths that he has as an individual, and firsthand you can give him some suggestions which probably you have also gained through your years of experience. So that makes a huge impact in terms of team building also. So my second point which I was harping on was that know your markets or go to your markets at the earliest possible time without any baggage in your mind. You just go there, feel it, understand it, a little bit of preparation you go do and then go, so that you have a better control on the market, and you can really give some good ideas, good things to your team, and your team will have a terrific connectivity with you. So this is the second point that I always want, because I had seen that a lot of people had been sitting into their offices, especially I'm talking about the sales team. They had been sitting into their offices, and in reviews things turned out very pathetic, where you know that the person of that particular territory is putting across a different viewpoint, whereas the manager from with his experience or gathered knowledge is putting across a different viewpoint, and there are more times of conflict which is apparent. So I don't want that conflict to happen. So you'll minimize conflict. Very important that the more you go, if you have a fair idea of that particular market, you'll minimize conflict. You have got better suggestions to give, and you maximize the productivity from that particular territory, because you give the right kind of directions. Because without understanding a particular market, you won't be able to give a direction which will be good enough. And I mean, if you do not go to a market and give a direction, and you go to a market and give a direction, there is a difference, and that difference really pays you out. And the third point is very important, which in today's world, especially once again as you work in a branded generic company, is manage your team. You need to, and that is like, you know, that's the Bible of business, or that's the Bible of success in today's world, where you really need to manage your team. That means you have to ensure that your recruitments at the very first point are thorough, that you have a well thought process in terms of recruiting a particular person. You have to be very, very clear what are you looking at in an individual, and you have to also ensure that whether you really understand that this particular individual is trainable to a certain extent or not. So if you have got these things correct, and you do a fair amount of, you know, right recruitment, then probably you have a right team to start off with. At times interviews goes haywire, you know, a lot of we misjudge people, and eventually not the right kind of people comes down within the organization. So what you do is that in the initial days, in the it's once again from Jack Welch, what he always says, that in the initial first 6 months you micromanage an individual, see to that every aspect, because these first 6 months which really help you to understand whether you are going to run the show for a longer period of time. The first 6 months are very, very important to micromanage, see how his movement is. At times you can intervene, at times you can't intervene, but you know, I would always prefer that you micromanage people in the first 6 months. Look at their activities, because that's what naturally comes out of them. You have not given them any guidance, so it comes out naturally. So you understand whether he makes the right fit. It makes a right fit to the organization. And once you have been through that, once you understood that yes, this is an individual I can really work on and work with, then it becomes very apparent for you to maintain a team. Now, attrition has been always a big issue and a hot topic which has always been discussed across the world. And we had seen that your tone of the voice is very important when you manage your team. Very, very important. I had seen multiple people, just because of the tone of the voice, people felt insulted, people felt humiliated and moved out of the organizations, and then the next person comes and the same thing repeats. So the senior leaders has to be very, very clear about one thing, that you have to create such kind of environment wherein a person can come down and, you know, talk to you, come down and discuss their problems with you. And you keep that space. It shouldn't be that you are out of touch, you are untouchable, and you have all the liberty and all the right to, you know, shout on people. So ensure that you don't do that, because if you do not have a steady team, you won't be able to succeed in a market which you know, where your competitor also sells the same copied product. So it's the relationship between the individual and the customer which matters a lot. So you need to protect your time, and to protect your team is an art, and you really need to learn that, and read more books, and learn from great leaders how they had managed their teams, and you have to put your focus, that's one of your priorities. I mean, you don't have an option, or you don't have a choice to really think that whether I'm going to do this or not. It's not a choice. It's something which is absolutely mandatory, that you manage your team. Organizations will only be successful if they have a steady team over a period of time. There definitely is a churning that happens, but you ensure that majority of your team players are intact, and they have a respect for you and for the organization, so that they find value in staying across and staying along with you and working with you and admire your company. So to wrap it up, three important things once again. First is that you keep the process right at the top. You make the infrastructure correct. You build the building correct. The skeleton has to be absolutely perfect to the building to thrive. Secondly is that you should know your market. So as a manager, you move to each and every market, work with each. If you have got a smaller team, you should ensure that you have worked with all your frontline people. You have to focus on that. That will give you a fair idea of the market, and everything you are aware of. And finally, then the most important thing is that once you have done all those things, you need to keep your team intact. You need to love them. You need to ensure that they stick around with you. They have respect for you. And because with a team which is coming and going, moving out, and attrition rates are high, however talented you are, you won't be able to succeed. You can be a superhero in your own territory. You can be a superhero as a leader, but results will tell you that you haven't succeeded. So that's what we have seen time and again in multiple companies. We have seen it in the Indian pharma space, and we have seen in multiple companies. So that's it. The top three things. Remember, keep the process right at your end. Know your markets and manage your team better, and minimize the attrition rates. You will be successful, I'm very, very sure. Thank you.